Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is a town hall candidates forum. Today is September 8th, 2024. I'm Michael White. I'll be your moderator. I'm a member of the board of the local station board of WBAI. I'm currently the chair there. This is a forum for candidates running for their local station boards, either WBAI or any local station board in the Pacifica network. What was posted is this will be an open forum for all the candidates running for the LSB elections. It will be a place where all points of view are welcome, and we encourage all to participate. This will be open to all candidates in New York City and throughout the network. All candidates will be able to speak freely and treated as equals. Listeners will be welcome from all stations and affiliates to ask questions of the candidates. And we will at one point be asking questions. Now, I do need to say, this is a disclaimer. The views expressed here are those of the candidates, not of the radio station or the Pacifica Foundation. And the sponsorship of the debate is not an endorsement by the sponsor of any candidate. So, this debate does not endorse any candidates. I'm going to open it up. We're going to take questions, and I'll take several questions from listeners at a time. Questions should not be addressed to particular questions, but it should be questions that can all of the candidates can answer. We have 5 candidates here, and I will myself, just while people formulate their questions, please be able to state your question in under a minute. And I think initially, I was thinking of limiting responses to 90 seconds, but we have 5 candidates here, so I think we'll make it a full 2 minutes. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. I don't know if anyone would like to volunteer as timekeeper, but I'll do my best to keep track of the time if we don't have a timekeeper. 2 minutes to respond, with the admonition that sometimes less is more.
I could do timekeeping.
All right, Eleanor. So very good. Hang on a second. Someone to admit.
Tell me again what the times are that I have to keep.
When someone who is not a candidate is stating a question or an area that they'd like the candidates to respond to, they'll have a minute. And for the moment, when we have responses, the candidates themselves should be responding in 2 minutes or less. So here is a yes, Eleanor.
I'm still getting my equipment set up for the timing. Give me just a moment longer.
All right. I'll check in with you in a second as to whether you're ready to go. Okay. All right. I think we now have 5 candidates. So I'm going to read the names of the candidates that I've identified here. Please speak up if I have not read your name. So I have Jim Dingman, Nissan Pitcher, M.K. Williams, Martha Rowan, John Brinkley, James Sagerton. If you're a candidate and you've entered the room and I did not read your name, would you please let me know? All right, I think I've got that. So the first question that I will throw out is, with it now so much easier to listen to things everywhere on the internet, do we still need radio? People seem to be listening to the radio less and less. If we still need radio, why radio. I'm going to take people randomly. James Sagerton, you are the. I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Eleanor, is your equipment ready to go?
I'll use the clock with its second hand instead
Okay.
of my equipment until my equipment's ready.
I'll double check you if I can with my own. Okay, so James Sagerton, that's the question. You may be the first to respond.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. And thanks everybody for being here. Yeah, why radio? Good question. Declining percentage of people getting their audio input from radio. However, the raw numbers are still pretty high because there's more people in the country than there used to be back in the day when radio was at the top of the heap. So why radio? So there's 2 or 3 primary reasons. One is that radio is owned by the radio signals are owned by the government. So ostensibly the First Amendment applies, whereas when you have private ownership of internet platforms, there is no First Amendment that applies, and people can censor, as we've seen increasingly occurring. Another important point about radio is that it's not traceable. I remember back in the day when I was quite paranoid before I threw caution to the wind and kind of came out of the closet. As a leftist, I was quite concerned about my contact with WBAI and ending up on all kinds of COINTELPRO lists, etc. But if you're just a listener, you can't be traced by radio. I understand they are now putting devices in some radios, Nielsen-like devices, where they can see who's listening to what. But as a general matter, radios are not yet built that way. And a third reason that I find for myself is that when I am listening to something that goes with a video screen, I have to be watching to get the full benefit of it. You know, there's some things you can listen to, talking heads you can listen to without watching, but there's always something that they're
15
flashing.
seconds.
Pardon me?
You have 10 seconds.
I didn't realize there was a time limit. Anyway, there are some things you can do with your hands or, you know, be occupied with while you're just listening, and you don't need to have your eyes focused on
Time's
a
up.
screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Brinkley, would you like to be the next to respond?
Sure. Why not radio? You know, it's there. Why limit ourselves to or eliminate ourselves from a media that is still there? Radio is great for people in their cars who are driving, and although as there was a decline when during COVID, when people were staying more at home and weren't commuting into work, it still is a viable media outlet. It doesn't preclude us from exploring other outlets, but let's not give up on radio.
There's nothing to repeat.
I think that muted. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on.
There's nothing to preclude us from moving into other forms of media outlets, but let's not move away from radio because it's still a viable form of communicating to listeners, commuters, older people, folks who still like to have their radio and listen to it.
Okay, thank you. Martha Rowan, would you like to go next?
Yes, well, most of the things that I was going to say have already been said, but I do want to emphasize, well, first of all, I want to emphasize the importance of the fact that it unlike the, because the radio is licensed by the government, we are protected by the First Amendment, and we see more and more how important that is. The government is in a bind. It really can't go behind and tell the owner that he needs to do it if there's if there's censorship, it's clear that it is open. So that's really important. Also, the internet is vulnerable to all kinds of, I think, problems with the with breakdown, with hacking and things like that, that radio is less vulnerable to. But again, I think the most important thing is that it is something that can't be hacked. I mean, that can't be you can't be traced. And we are living in a time when we see over and over again, almost every day, people being arrested around the world for their thought crimes. It's not even creeping anymore. It's galloping totalitarianism. And I think the radio is a bulwark against that. And it's a safe place for people to hear and to gain information and share information.
Thank you. All right, MK Williams, you're next.
Okie dokie. Try and show my face here. Oops, okay, there you go. All right. Well, ditto what everyone else has said, but unfortunately, because I don't live in New York, I can't, I can be traced for listening to WBAI, but I just wanted to point out, like, for me, there's a big difference between, I mean, what I get out here is either mainstream media, NPR or PBS, which is kind of like one step away maybe from mainstream media. And then, but if I really want to find out what's going on, if I really want to open my mind up and entertain completely new ideas, I need to listen to Pacifica. And WBAI is my favorite Pacifica station. So it's just invaluable, that particular radio, to me. That's all.
Okay, great. Nissan Pitcher, you're next.
Greetings, everybody. Radio, like many other things, is an old technology and a foundational technology. But this doesn't mean that it is an obsolete technology. This is our time where we could find a new golden age for radio. As stated before by many different candidates before, there are positives to radio. One, of course, is what was mentioned before, which is its anonymity. But it can offer so much more. And we have to find a way to elevate that technology and find out all the positives we can use. Those positives also include the ability for individuals to transmit their own signals and also not to have other controls mechanisms in place in between those signals. Also, with now latest technology, we have access to higher ranges and frequencies than ever before. We must be able to learn to use this new technology and find its niche that it's powerful in. It is stated before that the revolution will not be televised, but I can guarantee it will be on that radio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Jim Dingman, you can bring up the rear here.
All right. Well, the radio is the fundamental basis for all the Pacifica stations, even though all the comments made before come to play. That is, that we know that the audience has declined as a result of the pandemic. It's still huge, but it's declined. So my vision of how the radio station should be is that we take that building block and add to it. I've been involved now with podcasts now on YouTube for quite a while. And I think that that is something we should definitely allow and nurture and explore, not only the shows that are in drive time, but we should create a podcast series of channels so we can get new talent coming in, because you don't have to worry about the FCC so far in that particular realm. Secondly, the question of internationalizing our appeal and our interaction with other stations around the world is something we've talked about, but we've never done. And digitization allows us to do that. We could be cooperating with stations in Africa, in the Middle East, and Europe, and Asia, and all over the world, and do all sorts of interesting things. And finally, our strength that we also don't explain enough is the networks and affiliates that we are associated with, the 200 stations in the network. We should figure out ways to collaborate with them and create new forms of communication that use radio as a jump off point, but integrate it and create new kinds of sound that we can't even imagine yet. And so I'm always excited about these
15 seconds.
possibilities. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, 15 seconds is a 15-second warning, but that's okay. All right, so I just want to be sure that I've got all our candidates present identified. So I'm going to, if there's a candidate here that I don't know about, please let me know. The candidate, I'm going to read the names of the candidates we know are here. Jim Dingman, Nassan Pitcher, M.K. Williams, Martha Rowan, John Brinkley, James Sagerton. If I didn't read your name and you are a candidate here, could you please let me know?
Who is last four digits 1438?
People don't have to identify themselves unless they want to, or if they're a candidate and want to participate. So, all right. So I think in that case, now what I'd like to do is open it up for questions from people who are not candidates. What I'll do is I'll take two questions at the same time. So make your maybe you want to make your question more intriguing to make it more likely that it gets addressed thoroughly. I don't know, but person with telephone number, I'm going by raised hands, but if you don't know how to raise your hand, I'll call on you if you identify yourself. But person with telephone number ending in 1438, your hand is raised. The question should be general, so that all of the candidates can answer it. And please raise it in less than 1 minute. We lost the person who was about to speak. Sorry. Okay. Do I have a question from, does anyone who is not a candidate wish to pose a question to the candidates at this time? If not, we will proceed.
I'll come up with one.
Do you have it already?
Sure.
Okay. Eleanor, please go ahead.
What is the most important reason or reasons why people should vote, especially for you?
Okay, that's definitely less than a minute. All right. So, Jim Dingman, you went last. This time you go first.
Well, I guess that's an interesting question. And I sort of think that everybody who's running here has the ability to answer that they deserve to be elected. I guess in my case, I have a couple decades of experience with Pacifica, and I've gone through the old governance system, the new governance system. I'm committed to see us survive and thrive and grow our audience. And my thing is, how do we get fiscally stable? How do we grow our audience so that we have a large impact in not only the New York City metro area, but around the country and the world? So that's my thing. My thing is how we get stabilized. And I'm afraid that I have some problems thinking about how we're going to do that in the near future, given all the turmoil that's going on in the station for the past couple of months. But I'm committed to make sure that that happens and try to affect that as much as possible, whether I'm elected or not. that's my approach to this problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Nissan Pitcher, you're next.
Thank you. As a technical consultant by trade, my job would be to advise the LSB on the technical matters. So if elected to the board, I will establish a technical advisory committee in which I will lead to make sure that we have the latest technology and latest process moving forward. I have been working hard in the areas of political organizing and the media, and I feel confident that if we get on the board and get the Indians on the board, the free speech will be protected, and we will have new ways and more power to give the voices to the people on the radio and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. MK Williams, you're next.
Okay, well, as some people may know, I have been secretary of the LSB for going on 2 years now, and of the finance committee going on 3 years now, which means I've been kind of regular as far as attending meetings and showing up and doing work. And one of the things I've always mentioned that so far I think I'm the only one who's mentioned it, is there's a certain amount of interpersonal dysfunction that goes on in our groups. And I have, as secretary, I have tried, I hope I have maintained a devotion to neutrality so that I'm fair to all, I listen to all. Even though I have my own opinions and I identify with the indie slate, I do try to be fair and listen to all. And I think we need some of that neutrality to help, I guess, bring people together around a goal of actually solving these problems and saving our stations. So that's what I bring to the group, I hope.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Martha Rowan, you're next.
Hi, I don't think I can brag as much about myself particularly, other than to say that I'm really, really committed to free speech and a range of opinions, and that I think it's extremely important that WBAI continue and be saved from the turmoil that it's been going through, the economic turmoil and otherwise. I would certainly work very hard for that. And I do have experience. I've run for office twice. I have been involved in, I've been involved in activism through Citizens Defending Libraries and other organizations. I have also have been a teacher, and I think that helps me with an ability to work with others, all of these things. So that's my pitch for myself.
Thank you. All right, John Brinkley, you're next.
Big thank you. Yeah, I'm a trained project manager. I like to be focused, be organized, be goal-oriented, work with people who want to get things done. I served on the board previously, sometimes as chair. We were able to get a number of things done, and that's my goal, working across whatever arbitrary barriers that we set up, but to focus on what needs to be done and coming up with ideas from wherever they come from, to get those, to pull out the best idea and to work on implementing those ideas. So I've been a listener since the mid 70s. I know the value of the station, of free speech, and getting people to be able to participate. I I think we need to expand so that we service a wider um, region, including New Jersey and Westchester and so on. But again, I've lived in other countries around the world, so it's Peace Corps volunteer, and I see the value of free speech and incorporating other people's ideas so that you're not so narrow that
10 seconds.
you only see things your way. So again, I'm goal oriented, willing to work with people to get things done.
Thank you. All right, James Sagerton.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, why should people vote for me? So, a few things in terms of experience. I've been a 50+ year listener. I got involved in governance as a volunteer first, and then in governance about 10 years ago. I have served on almost every committee there is. Most recently as the Pacifica National Board's treasurer, by virtue of being the chair of the National Finance Committee. I also have a law degree, which I use to teach English at Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey. But I do have some analytical skills that I developed as a law student, and some knowledge of how to research and figure out what the legal questions are in an issue. And I've been able to apply that to my work in Pacifica governance. But finally, it's my commitment to the platform, the mission statement. We're a free speech platform that's critical. We're one of the few, I think we're the only media platform in the world that is democratically organized and operated, and a regular broadcast media. So that's my real commitment. It's to the mission statement, to maintaining that free speech platform and strengthening it. We have a tiny market share of 0.1 to 0.2. There's a lot of potential listeners out there. If we broaden our message, broaden our appeal, we could reach a lot more people just as a radio signal without expanding into a multimedia platform, as I think we should.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to ask each of the candidates to state in a question that is 1 minute or less what they think is a important question that they would like to have all of the candidates answer. And please listen to please other candidates listen, because after this we will come back and have a round where you'll be addressing some of those things. So Martha Rowan, in 1 minute or less, could you state what you think is an important question for all of the candidates to be answering?
I guess one of the questions I'd like other candidates to answer is an important question for me too, and that is, what exactly do we mean when we talk about freedom of speech and range of opinions? Because I get the sense that there is a range of opinions on how much freedom of speech we really want, and what we mean by opening up the dialogue to a full range of opinions, and why any candidate considers that of such importance.
Thank you. John Brinkley, 1 minute or less, an important question for all the candidates.
Okay. Why do you think that there should be a limit on our fundraising structure? I know there has been the LOFT, the LSB Outreach and Fundraising Task Force, but that never seems to be reinstated, although it is a structure for allowing individuals, both affiliated with the station and listeners and independent folks, to contribute ideas and to help to implement ideas. It's not the only way we can raise funds, but it does offer a structure for incorporating good ideas. Why do you think that is being blocked from being reinstated at the LSB?
Okay, thank you. James Sagerton, 1 minute or less, an important question for all the candidates.
Thank you. I think the question I have is that periodically over time, there have been takeover attempts in Pacifica. I think in the early years, we were concerned that these takeover attempts would come from outside, perhaps, right-wing political forces or commercial forces. But oftentimes we find that those attempts come from other places in the left, particular groups or people with particular opinions about things have tried to come in and dominate. Luckily, our structure is such that it really kind of tends to prevent that. But do you think that your view of the world should be what dominates Pacifica, or should it be widely open to a multitude of views?
Thank you. Jim Dingman, you're next.
Well, to me, the most fundamental problem is how do we build audience in New York City? I'll be very specific with WBAI, and that applies to all the stations. We have a 0.1% share in the city. The station in Los Angeles has 0.2. I understand Houston's up to 0.6. Berkeley's about 0.3, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8 is for Washington. But the problem with that is that it leads us to these constant problems of lack of money. So my question would be, how do we build audience? And I'm talking way beyond the normal assumptions that people have. We have to think of something completely different that we aren't imagining right now. That would be my question.
Thank you. Hassan Pitcher, you're next.
Well, I'll just be a little more to the point on this question, and that would be, if elected to LSB, what would you be personally committed to do to while as a member of the board, as a member of the board? What events, what practices, what is your foundation that you will be personally committed to continue the fight in keeping free speech in WBAI and giving power and voice to the people?
Okay, thank you. MK Williams, 1 minute or less, an important question for the board members. For the candidates.
Well, Martha stole my free speech question, but I've thought of another one, which is, it's in our bylaws that the Pacifica and all of its committees and subcommittees function according to Robert's rules, which is kind of a curated form of democracy. So my question is, what does, democracy can be messy, you might have a very good cause and it just fails the vote, doesn't get enough votes. But on the other hand, when everybody's opinions are pulled in, you can actually, a group product is usually a better product than an individual product. So what does democracy mean to you in terms of functioning on the board?
Thank you. So in a moment, we're going to go back to the candidates for a 2-minute response round. First, I'd like to say that we are taking questions from people who are here who are not candidates, and we'll come back and I'll see if we have any of those in a minute. So if you're here and you'd like to put a question to the candidates, please get ready and please be able to state your general question that can be answered by all the candidates in less than a minute. Okay, that said, MK Williams, Having heard all those important questions, how would you like to respond?
Oh, well, the free speech question is dear to my heart. I mean, I've been thinking about the free speech issue ever since the ACLU argued to let the Nazis march in Skokie, Illinois. You know, if the Nazis can't march, nobody can march eventually. On the other hand, does that mean that I want someone like Tucker Carlson, who has been noted to omit from his programming certain truths that I think are big omissions? Do I want him to broadcast on BAI's air? So in that case, maybe I also have a curated form of free speech in my mind. But ultimately, I think the cure for misinformation or disinformation, the cure for bad speech, is more speech. I do think that you need to have speech that is at least within some guardrails of decorum. In other words, not using bad language, not jumping into a conversation, calling people names, that kind of thing, because that means you haven't actually made an argument, and why should anyone listen to you in that case? So that's on the free speech issue. I'll let someone else talk.
Okay, thank you. Hassan Pitcher, having heard those questions, how would you like to respond?
Point of clarification real quick. I can answer any one of those questions, or I can answer multiple of those questions. I'm a little...
You heard a round of what people are thinking, important questions, and you can consider which ones are important enough that you want to respond to, or whatever. So however you want to do it.
Okay, so I get as much as I can. So real quick, my version of free speech is pretty simple. Any thoughts, ideas, or messaging should be allowed, no matter how controversial it may seem. The only thing that I restrict from that is calls for action. And for obvious reasons, a call for action is actually something that can be considered, an act of terrorism or act of, violence in some way to cause actions to occur. So, but everything else other than that is on the table, because like Ms. Kay said, the only cure for bad speech is good speech, is more good speech. That's all. As for the idea of people taking over from the left, I've seen it's worse than that. I feel that the left shoots themselves in the foot, and they've been kind of conditioned to do that, unfortunately. And that's reason because all their good leaders have been, removed forcefully, one way or another. But what I want to see people do is have a commitment to an action, because it's a lot easier to say we're going to do something. It's a lot different to actually pin down and say, yes, I will do X, Y, Z. What I'm saying I'm going to do for X, Y, and Z, I'm going to take my talents as a technical consultant and as a new age millennial, in the new media spaces with the new information and new technologies to forward in a golden age of radio in its new niche and be on a technical advisory board. I will help bring new ideas and new solutions to the table. That's what I will offer. And hopefully that would solve many of the issues we have today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Dingman.
Let me take a stab at all of them. First of all, the freedom of speech issue. Pacifica is famous for its defense of freedom of speech. It's been taken to the Supreme Court. We've got the 7 dirty words case, George Carlin. We've got Howell in the 50s. There's no ambiguity that everybody, no matter what faction or tendency they are associated with, are in favor of freedom of speech in general as a principle. Now, the question of the fundraising issue is an important one that John raised. We have to all work together on this. We have to figure out a way to make it work. My difficulties with what was going on in the past was not much was getting accomplished. And we have to figure out a way to make it work, especially now, given the fact that we have a complete collapse of our listener member donorship. We have this unusual situation where we're getting lots of money from unions, but that is not going to pay bills. So at least I don't think so. So we have to be open about that. Now, the question of who dominates the station and the tone, I've always had an open tent policy towards this. The reason why everybody fights about this so much is because there is a very poor, at the national level, commitment to grassroots forms of communication, such as community radio. And so people are always fighting for dominance to control the microphone. And I've been watching this go on for decades. So one thing that Pacifica should do is take an active role in affecting national policy on this issue, which they don't. They've retreated from for a long time. So we should re-enter the fray. Building audience quickly. We got to get back. One thing, there's many things to do, but the arts is one thing to do. We don't do enough of that. And we are in the most important artistic city in this country, being in New York City. In terms of let me just finish the last comment with the Robert's Rules and democracy. That's an interesting problem. I'm committed to democracy. I fought for these changes 30 years ago, so I remain committed and not to see them diluted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and if we can do a good job of wrapping up quickly when time is called, I appreciate it. So, John Brinkley.
Yeah, there's a number of things that, and I'm sorry, I don't remember all of the issues, but some of it has to deal with programming and in terms of freedom of speech. I would like to see, and I'm not the PD, but I would like to see more of the producers have debates where they would have opposing opinions, people with opposing opinions be on at the same time and have a controlled dialogue debate back and forth so that the audience can get a good idea of the issues and different views of the issues. I think that would, consistent with free speech and allowing all sides or multiple sides to air their views in a safe environment, non-hostile, respectful environment. So the focus is on the issues and not on the personalities and so on. In terms of the loft, Jim was a member of the loft. I know that anything can be improved, but you need to at least have the structure there so that people can come with ideas in terms of outreach and fundraising. We probably need to do a better idea of helping them implement those ideas, because some things were put on the table and good ideas, but they really weren't implemented. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Time.
Thank you. James Sagerton.
Thank you. I'm sandbagged by this. I thought you were going to go around and have each candidate answer each of the questions that was raised by the other candidates. I didn't take any notes on these questions, so now I have to try and remember what was asked, but I'll try to go quickly here. The question I asked was, do you think that your point of view should be the dominant point of view at the radio station, and basically to the exclusion of other points of view? My answer to that is, of course not. We have to make room for a broad range of viewpoints, and it's not only fruitless in terms of revenue and building audience and membership, but it's destructive to have these fights about who's in control and who's not in control. Let's see what else. Oh, building audience. Yeah, we have, as I pointed out earlier, between 0.1 and 0.2% of the market share in the New York metropolitan area. There's lots of other market share out there that we could build, and we could double our market share and still only be at 0.2 to 0.3. And so we can get that. We can go out there and reach for that and make ourselves solvent. So again, broader appeal, larger range of programming, subject matter. Okay, so let's see what else. The fundraising model. John asked about the fundraising model. We have this FCC consent decree that I think was partially written by us, and I think it's very destructive. It's more restrictive than other organizations' fundraising limitations, and we needed a smoother transition, a gradual transition from one kind of fundraising to another.
10 seconds.
And debate on the air, yes, I'm very much in support of debate on the air. It makes for interesting radio that will build our audience.
Time.
Thank you. All right, Martha Rowan.
Yes, on the question of building our audience, I agree that one of the most important things we can do is to make sure we have a wide range of programming with different opinions. And even some, I'm not suggesting Tucker Carlson, but I think we're mistaken if we think that having people with very divergent opinions in our programming will be a negative. I think it is something that would be, first of all, it hones people's ability to understand and express their own viewpoints. But it also draws in people, not just people with differing viewpoints, but it certainly would broaden the audience in that way. But it also it encourages engagement, because just hearing the things that you already believe repeated back to you sometimes can be comforting, but at other times it can be a little deadening. Whereas when you hear, and again, I agree with Kay, we don't want people screaming at each other. We don't want shock jock radio, but people who have civil debates and conversations about issues, really important issues on which people in this country disagree, will engage people. That people will be more interested in listening and also in contributing, because they will feel that there's something really important at stake. As far as the
5 seconds.
Oh, okay, that's all. I won't take up the next question. So.
Okay, so thank you. All right, I'd like to go back. We have candidates here, and we have people who are not candidates. So people who are not candidates are invited to ask questions of the candidates, and I'll probably take more than one at a time. So you can raise your hand, and I'll call on you to ask a question. You can raise your hand on Zoom, or *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone. Okay, very good. Daryl McPherson, can you state a question in a minute or less, and have it be a general question so that all of the candidates can answer it?
What is the strategy of each candidate? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Is it okay, David?
Yep.
Michael? Okay. What is the strategy of each candidate to increase listenership and raise more funds? And as a board member, is it wise to have a requirement that board members take responsibility for raising a certain amount of funds for the station.
All right, sounds good. I will take another question in tandem with that, but I don't see a hand raised. So in that case, we're going to go.
I could ask one.
I'll tell you what, we'll come back to you, Eleanor, because you've.
I understand.
Okay, so let's go straight to the candidates. All right. So Martha Rowan.
Okay. Now the question just went out of my head. I had it a second ago. Can you just oh, I know one of the second, I think it was a two-part question, but the second part of the question was about board members making commitments to raise a certain amount of money. I don't know, is that already an expectation of board members? If it's not, it's an interesting idea. I know that that's often the case with certain organizations, or sometimes with business, even, like law firms. They have to be a partner, you have to bring in a certain amount of business. I think it's probably unrealistic for a lot of us, but it's something that's worth considering. But as far as how to go about raising funds and increasing income, I go back to what I have said before. I think one important thing is to make sure we have an engaged audience that really wants to be involved and care about what's going on, is excited about it. And one of the ways you do that is to have a give and take and a broader range of subject matter. But as far as in general, I'm committed to learn about what are the ways that WBAI has raised money in the past, ideas that people have for doing it in the future, and to work on as much as I can to help with that, because obviously we can't do anything unless we have enough money to exist.
Thank you. John Brinkley.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a number of personal ideas of ways of raising money, but I think that a committee, a task force like the Loft, where people can come up with ideas, and we can, get a wide range of ideas and look at the ones that make most sense, and work on doing those, whether we're going after famous people or high income or foundations or whatever, to attract them to donate to the station, or whether we're going on the street and handing out flyers to increase the people who know about the station, and talk to them about the different programs and everything. There's a lot going on during the summer and during the fall. So that's why having flyers and palm cards and distributing them to people on the street, talking to them about the station and get them to tune into something that may find their interest. That's a way of expanding the listenership and to grow the station. And also, but having the Loft as a overall structure, because we can only cover certain things during an LSB meeting. And so having an outside meeting where you can take your time, you can explore ideas, you can follow up on a regular basis, I think is important.
Thank you. James Sagerton. You can fix your sound, James, if you could.
Any better?
a little bit better.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm in a more rural area that doesn't have good coverage all the time. So the questions are about fundraising. So one is should we be a money-making board or should we not? And I have always been proud of the fact that we are not a money-raising board, even though it is one of the responsibilities. It's one of the things that the LSBs are encouraged to do in the bylaws, but it's not a requirement because that's the model of organizations that basically have a lot of wealthy sponsors. They get wealthy people onto their boards, and those wealthy people talk to their wealthy friends and they donate money. And while we want to do that to the extent that we can, we don't want to be dominated by that model because ultimately that can change the content of our output. We want to remain the kind of people-powered organization that we are. So I'm glad we're not a money-making board with that as a requirement. Let's see. What was the other part of the question? The money-making model that we now have as a result of the consent decree with the FCC. That's going to create a lot of difficulty for us. Our day-to-day operational fundraising has flatlined. Yes, we've gotten some union money. I don't think that's going to be sustainable. The new interim general manager even said as much at the last finance committee meeting. It's a bridge. It's a gap bridge to a new era. It remains to be seen if the premium as the program can work. It has failed in the past. That's why we went to the premium or thank you gift model. We invented listener sponsorship back in the 40s, late 1949, when Pacifica was created. It was picked up by PBS, NPR, but it's even failing them, and now they're using corporate sponsorship. So we have to reinvigorate how we do that.
Thank you. All right. Jim Dingman.
Well, as usual, Daryl asks a tough question. First of all, the issue of a LSB that is a giving LSB. We actually had that model in the past. That's how we acquired the church in the late 60s, early 70s, which we lost due to a whole bunch of reasons, including not having sound business practices because they weren't paying the wage. They were paying the wages, but they weren't paying the taxes. They lost a asset that was now worth. And keep in mind that budget in 1972 was $4.8 million in 2024 terms. So no Pacifica station spends $4.8 million these days. So to get back to that is a worthwhile objective. Now, I've actually been under the old management. I would actually go and raise money. Berthold would use me for that purpose. And so I did raise money. I didn't give my own money, but I would raise money for him. And it's an important function of the LSB. Now, we do have to get this fundraising operation back in gear. It has to be a holistic operation with everybody involved. And the strategy of raising the money is a very important one. And frankly, one I think we should devote one of these debates to, just how we're going to do this. Because we only have 30 to 60,000 people listening a week to the station, as opposed to 300 to 500,000 people a week listening to the station in 1972. And that number sometimes would reach 1 million, according to the New York Times in 1972. So how do we get back to those days? That's, to me, the problem to solve. Thanks.
Thank you. Nissan Pitcher, you're next.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Dow, for that fantastic question. And I believe that the answer of this is what my strategy would be in fundraising and in getting more people motivated. First of all, we want to get the audience we want to get is the newer people, it's the newer generation, and we have to go to where they are. I am part of a younger generation. I know where these people are. I know the models that they have now, and I know the content they're looking for. They're looking for things like podcasts like Joe Rogan, like, Jimmy Dore, Tucker Carlson and all that other stuff. Their audience is there, but you have to go to them. And the way we do that is through all the different networks that they're on now, right? And that's where we need to be. and we need to update our systems. We need to I want to bring an update to the Pacifica system, to the websites, and I want to also bring up a new app, right? And this app will make it simple and easy for everybody to connect to all these different networks back to Pacifica, making it a hub of new age and making it fashionable again, making radio fashionable, just like how vinyl became fashionable to the new generation again. I want to bring a new golden age to radio by remarketing and rebranding radio as a whole and making it easy for the young generation to get on board through the methods that they know, through the TikToks, through the Discords, and through the Instas. All that available in one place, back to radio, and having an app that turning your phone or any device into a radio makes that even more precious to them in a customizable way. And to answer another question, no, I don't think you want to do that because it's about incentive structures, about making a requirement to get donations, like what the other guy said. You don't want to encourage things that require money because then you're encouraging bad behavior. You're encouraging bad practices. You want to encourage people to do the right thing.
Thank you.
You want. Thank you. So.
Okay. So, MK Williams.
Well, I'm glad that Nissan and James didn't give a quantitative value to how much board members should, how much fundraising board members should do. But because I mean, I'm not wealthy and I don't know anybody that wealthy, and you know, I think what's important is the effort you give, not necessarily the end result. But I do think it's possible. I lived in New York for a quarter of a century, and I still have friends in New York who are not BAI buddies. And I think you could probably say, if you could bring in 3 or 4 BAI buddies each, it's not like exorbitant, and it does provide some ongoing income. And also, you know, you might get the word around, like Daryl is always very good about recommending that people take the archive copy of the programs that you like and sending it to people you know. And for example, we have this program Beyond the Pale, which is sort of a Jewish interest program, and there are Jewish people I know who kind of stopped listening to BAI because they think it's anti-Zionist and that's problematic for them. And I might send them copies of the Beyond the Pale to say, hey, you know, we don't want to have one exclusive point of view here. Please come back and tell us your point of view. So anyway, so as far as the Loft Committee, I did want to say something about that, which is, okay, well, I can't say that in 8 seconds. So to be continued.
All right. Thank you. All right. So here is your next question. A lot of people think that we have really excellent programming on the on WBAI, and there's an argument that it's some of the best programming in New York that people have never heard about, and we have a big question about why haven't people heard about it, and we need to get people to know about our programming to appreciate it. So along with a lot of other things that have migrated in a big way to the internet, advertising and publicity have gone to the internet in a super big way. That's where, and there are a lot of tactics that use the internet in various ways to advertise. However, the internet is hostile territory, algorithmically and in other fashions, to a great deal of the alternative messaging that is part of the mission statement of WBAI. How do you think this should be taken into account? How do you think we should be confronting the challenge of using or not using the internet and getting information out about how good our programming is so that people know about it? So with that said, um, we'll go back to responses of 2 minutes, and MK, you're first.
Oh dear. Well, that's what everyone says, is how, people haven't heard about our program. And so the issue becomes on air, which is people already knowing about it because they're listening, and off air fundraising. And I was quite frustrated with even though I think Bertolt did an amazing job keeping the station alive for 15 years. He got very discouraged toward the end there on any off-air fundraising, because it's fraught. Nowadays in New York, if you rent a hall, you have to pay insurance. If you're going to have a program and you're going to sponsor it, it's costly, and it might cost you more than you actually make. Now, the benefit of off-air fundraising is you get people, word of mouth, people to tell their friends, people to bring other friends in. And that's what outreach is all about, and that's important. But it has to be planned rather carefully so that you're not actually spending more in order to do that outreach. And as far as using the internet, I think what I said before, Daryl's idea of taking those programs from the archives and sending it through email to your friends is one way of getting the word out.
Thank you. Martha Rowan.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly how hostile the internet actually is necessarily to us. I mean, we can see it as a rival, certainly, or we can see it as a potential collaborator. I think that, again, I think it's important for us to try to look into creating collaborations with people who have an internet presence. We already, with somebody like Jimmy Dore is on the internet. That's basically his YouTube channel was one of his basic ways of becoming really well known. And I would think that if we had more collaborative, there's such a rich array of podcasts, video platforms of people with all areas. I mean, I can only think of a limited number. It's an endless thing, and you can, if we may had a collaboration with some of these who would have their internet presence as well as their radio presence, that would bring in more listeners. And again, so I think that one of the things we need to do is and that's something I would be interested in learning more about, perhaps especially with somebody like Nissan, to see how we can coordinate and find ways to use the internet. And I think, I mean, I don't know exactly how advertising on the internet works, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't find that as a possible way of raising funds as well.
Okay, thank you. Nissan Pitcher.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
It was a long form question, but basically let's assume that we don't have to change our programming and that we have great programming that but people don't know about it. And the most important form of advertising in many ways these days seems to be the advertising that's done in various ways through the internet. And however, its origins being in DARPA or whatever, the internet is highly manipulated, and you've got algorithms all over the place, and it can be hostile territory for us. Given that, what do? Use the internet or use other means to get information out about our programming? So
yes, That's a fantastic question, and it's a very complicated question. So I'm going to try to simplify it as best as I can. Okay, so there are many different methods that are available to us right now, and there's different models that are being used. Now, yes, the internet is highly controlled because it was a centralized system, but there are new decentralized systems that are coming online and they are available right now. Radio can be a part of that new era of decentralization. And this is allowed by the ability of what we know as the Internet of Things. That is the ability of all different technological devices to be interconnected and to be both transmitters and receivers, from your car to your refrigerator to your watch. Every little electronic device is slowly being connected to each other in communications in some ways. And this is also allowed in radio frequencies. And with the new radio bandwidth frequencies that we have today, we could all use together to interconnect each other in brand new ways. And now we should continue with advertisement, but also different means of actually get donations and funding, like Patreon and other direct methods of peer-to-peer transitions, as well as asset building. All these are capable and available to us right now, but we could be at the forefront of that. I need to be on that board to help you be part of that forefront. This is a new generation and a new time with new unique opportunities. It's a very difficult process to get to, but with radio, we can do this. We can have a new golden age of radio. And I hope to bring that forward to you. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, thank you. John Brinkley.
Yeah, Neon, you don't necessarily need to be on the board to make a contribution. I think that collaboration is an excellent idea. I think that working with the local colleges, with their students, with their media group, to access their student body, their media, to bring them in, to have them work with our producers, to learn and to also bring their knowledge. I think that to paraphrase Malcolm X, we should use all means necessary. By going on to the internet and using influencers and putting different things that catch people's eyes, that bring them into either our web or other media that hopefully will be moving on, is good. But I still think that meeting people on the street, attending different activities, talking about handing out flyers is important. So we should not just put all our eggs in one basket, but we should use everything that is available to us.
Okay, thank you. Jim Dingman.
Well, again, we could spend hours talking about this. It is my fundamental belief that the cachet of the content of the station has essentially collapsed in the past 25 to 30 years. And it's proven in the kind of financial problems we're in. One of the reasons why is that we have not transitioned to the 21st century in terms of all the digital tools we could use. This has been going on as a problem for decades. It began when we didn't glom on to the independent media center movement, which was actually given great support by one of the hosts of the station, Emmanuel Goldstein, who gave over a space on 28th Street for free to the Independent Media Center, and that kind of energy wasn't put into the station. So right from the start, from 2000, we didn't get that generation young, under 30 generation energy coming into the situation. That's what we need. Frankly, I think we should, have the whole place overhauled from top to bottom. I don't agree that the idea that the station's sound is great. It may be great to some people, and that's cool. That's why we have to figure out ways to use digitization to diversify the sound. But it's not great to enough people to pay the bills, so we're not constantly caught in these terrible problems we're caught in. And that's to me the problem. How do we get up? I heard the finance committee talked about 1.5 to 1.6 million dollars as a budget. Great, but how we get that? To me, it's very difficult to do that given the present content, which is not attracting enough people. It's as simple as that. Some of these shows only have a couple hundred people to 500 people listening to them, and great. I don't put those people down. But on the other hand, we have to pay bills, we have to pay rent, we have to pay tower expenses, etc. And so, how to get to that bridge is a tough issue. The votes, we need a lot of time to spend thinking out how to solve that problem.
Thank you. And in a minute, we'll be back to see if whether non-candidates have any questions for the candidates. James Sagerton, you're the last to respond to this question.
Thank you, Michael. So the question is basically about promotion and what about the internet? How do we use it? What do we do with it? So it used to be that promotion was not something you had to be too concerned about because we were in the middle of the FM dial and anybody spinning the radio dial would eventually come upon us. And if they liked what they heard, they would stay. That's how I found it. But increasingly people don't spin the dial, they scan and they press a button. It has to be pre-programmed. And of course, there is the internet, that behemoth that has drawn away so much of the audience. So what do we do with the internet? First of all, I think we need to do YouTube and we need to do podcasts. Those are the two cheapest ways that are immediately available to us without a great influx of cash. We can do those things immediately. There's programming on the internet, on YouTube, that is clunky. It's basically nothing but a slideshow with an audio track, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of hits. Children are getting tens and hundreds of thousands of hits on YouTube. We can do this. We just have to get busy and do it. We've had examples where programs on YouTube suddenly had a 700 to a 7,000% increase in audience. So it's a no-brainer. Palm cards, the billboard, the wonderful donor that gave us the billboard, it was a major donor in other ways. Handing out leaflets and flyers, those are all good 20th, even 19th century methods, and they're good for bonding people to the station to, make an effort to contribute. But the way we really make money is through the media, and that's either on the broadcast air or through a future greater use of the internet. That's the way to really increase the numbers.
Thank you.
So, am I done?
I think you hit 2 minutes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Carolyn Burden has her hand raised. So I think, Carolyn, you have a question that you can express in less than a minute, and it's for all the candidates generally, right?
Yes, thank you very much. I've been working with several other people, and it's been somewhat delayed, as Bruce knows, on a survey of the listeners that I'm hoping to get the CAB to sponsor. And we have the usual questions like demographics, who, what, when, where, etc. What do you listen to, and so on. But what important thing would you like to have the listeners tell us in such a survey? What do you think we need to know about the listeners that we can't find out from the usual questions? What do you listen to, and what do you like, and so on? What can we ask in order to help us target our programming a little bit better and direct the work of the station towards people who really want to hear something that they don't hear now, or do something that they don't see us doing? Any suggestions for such a survey? I'd appreciate that.
Fine.
All right. All right. Jim Dingman. Jim Dingman, you're first to respond in your meeting.
Okay. Well, those are good things, Carolyn. We should be doing surveys all the time. We should never not stop that. We have to constantly get feedback from our audience. And I think that the term is thank you gifts. We should be changing up the kind of questions we get from the folks that are paying for the service of the air constantly. And I think that another easy way we can get that data is the membership data, if I recall, is automated and it's divided by zip codes. So, and addresses. So that data can actually be correlated to general census data, and we can get a good sense about who's listening. At this point, it's a very different audience than it was 30 years ago. It's mainly African American who are listening to our air. I think it's at least 50 to 60% African American. It's much more Hispanic. So it's a very different demographic than what occurred back in 1990. And I think that has to be part of the factor. Now, in terms of increasing the amount of audience, one thing that someone hasn't suggested is Twitter. Twitter, whatever we think about Elon Musk, and I don't have much to say positive about the son of a bitch, I think that we can do audio shows on Twitter. That, in other words, we can do new forms of expression that we haven't even thought of yet that can attract people. And Jim Sagerton makes the point about how audience gets built up on these YouTube channels. That is an area where you don't have the FCC breathing down your neck as of now. So one thing I think is for us to join in and support internet neutrality, such as defending Section 230, which is going to get attacked by both the Democrats and the Republicans. But the kind of questions we need to ask is, what do you want to support? What do you want to hear? And we have to do that all the time.
Thank you.
All right, James Sagerton.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, a number of things to say here. And I think the last thing that Jim uttered was, what can you give? I think we should be asking people that when we do surveys, can you give? You know, what is reasonable to be asking for? And it's also not just what can you give monetarily, but what can you give? What special skills do you have? As was pointed out earlier, you don't have to be on these boards to donate skills and talents that could help us. So make it community radio and really try and involve our listeners and our members in and get them involved. We've fallen away from that mostly due to a lack of staff to help coordinate all of that. But, you know, you need a volunteer coordinator who can then coordinate the volunteers. So that would be one aspect. I do want to say from the previous question, somebody asked about or mentioned how advertising works on YouTube. When you reach a certain threshold of hits on YouTube, the advertisers seek you. Now, we would want to screen our advertisers and make sure that they're compatible with our general worldview, you know, not be racist, not be, you know, union busting, not be sexist, etc. But that is one thing that I think we can do. And also with the surveys, we want to ask people, of course, as Carolyn said, what do you want to hear? But also ask them, what do you want us to do that we're not doing? I think Jim Dingman mentioned that one. And basically, you have to ask them, what do you like and what don't you like about what we're doing now?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Nissan Pitcher.
Yeah, so the question was, what should we ask on a survey? If you don't know how you do that, I would ask the question, what are the age of the listeners? I want some personal information on what our audience is. And just to go on from that, I think the best way of getting, you know, this analytical data is, again, using the internet, but we could do this through an app where we could collate and aggregate all our logistical information and data analysts through a single location from, you know, any sources we can attach to, which would be Twitter, which would be YouTube, which would be, you know, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. We could do all of that through every type of social media and media outlet that we can attach to. We could do it all interconnected to an app and aggregate all the statistics of and aggregate all the data of all the people listening, and that way we could reach to them and know who we're talking to and debate to them, and then have a place for them to come in and actually give us that feedback directly through an app, make it easy in one place. And that way we won't have to guess or we won't have to ask. We'll just know and make it easy to give it to them. There. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. John Brinkley.
Yes, I see, again, collaborating with a college who have, it'd be a project for their students to conduct a survey. I see two different pools of people. I think that we need to survey from our own database or listeners who have maybe drifted away, but we still have them in our database to understand what they like, what they didn't like, and with the students to see where do people really like to get their information from, what do they, what kind of entertainment do they seek, and so on. But the broadness of the survey, I would allow them to develop and to issue it out, maybe through some of Nissan's portals or some portals that they feel would give us the best results. But collaboration and pooling, surveying our own population within our own databases and outside populations, so that we can grow our station in with our own audience, previous audience, and to new audiences.
Thank you. So MK Williams.
Okay, oh wow, some good ideas. Yes, if you're doing a survey, it's important to include demographics. I include all demographics that you can think of, and also how did you find out about our station, and that gives you ideas about what worked and what hasn't worked in the past in terms of your outreach efforts. I would say, if you're going to send these out, we have less than 500 listeners who actually qualify for this election based on giving us their address and paying us, their membership. So I would not want to oversaturate them with having them rate every single thing that comes their way. I know I find it personally kind of annoying sometimes, that every little contact I make with say my doctor's office, who I've been with since the 1990s, I get an email, I get a couple of emails. How was your last interaction? It sort of like gets annoying, and I mostly just don't comply with doing that. But we might also put out to reach the people who are listening who are not actual members. We might put out a cart that then they can respond to if they want to call in their opinions. But if we do the social media, like YouTube and X, we can count the likes that we get in the comments, and that's kind of a automatic way to rate yourself. That's what I know about.
All right, thank you. All right, here's the next question. A number of alternate media sites are adopting what is known as a freemium model. So just to be clear for everyone, what a freemium model is, where part of, maybe most of, or some of the product is provided open access for free, but to get the entire thing, you have to pay and go behind a paywall. So, for instance, one podcast habitually asks a particularly intriguing question of the interview guest, and then says to hear it, go behind, pay to go behind the paywall. Or, for instance, the interview will come out first to paying members and only on a several day delay basis to others. Or other goodies are available to the to people who pay.
It's been a minute.
All right, I'm not going to subject myself to the minute. So, question is, how do you feel about this being adopted by WBAI? Do you consider it consistent with its approach, dividing content into those who can afford to pay more and to those who can't afford it? So with that, and we have a new candidate who has just arrived. So that's Jack DePalma. He'll be answering questions. James Sagerton, you're first.
Oh, delightful. Ready for that one. Okay. No, I don't think there should be more information for people who can afford more, or complete information for people who can afford more, and less information for people who can't. I don't think that's a good model for us. However, there are some things that you could put behind a paywall, such as access to the archives. If somebody wants to use something for, like I did when I was in college, use some of this stuff to help me write my college papers, or, people have other uses for the material, whether they're historians or just hobbyists, or they're just, activists, or whatever they happen to, their bent happens to be. They want to have access to our programming and access, maybe not even to the recent archives, because that would kind of exclude people who, just want information for its sake. And if they don't have money, we don't want to exclude them, but deeper access to the archive, or maybe older access to the archives for older materials, for research kinds of, or maybe even commercial purposes, who knows. We could put that behind a paywall. And also, if people want to use our materials eventually in books, in research projects, academic work, we could definitely have them purchase it's not a copyright, what is it? A license. They get a license to use our copyrighted materials.
Okay, thank you. John Brinkley?
Yeah, I think the question, as you originally stated, is a bad idea. To put, we're struggling to keep the audience that we have now for free, and I don't see how as good of the quality and access and so on that we have to all the good material. So I don't see how we could think of charging a premium to access, some of the things. I don't think it's a good idea. Some of the things that Sagerton brought up may have is worth exploring, but as the original question, I think it's doesn't make sense at this time, since we're struggling to maintain the audience that we have right now for free.
Okay, thank you. Next, Martha Rowan.
Yes, I agree that there is a problem with the. I mean, I don't have a problem with the freemium idea on principle, but I think it's a problem for something like WBAI. First of all, I don't see exactly how it would work with radio, and secondly, I agree that it's given the, that we say it's the 99.5 for the 99 point, the other 99.5 of the population. I think in a way, it's it's sort of against the principles. On the other hand, what James Sagerton said about the idea of maybe the access to deep archives, that might be worth something that, you have to be a member or something like that to get that. And there might be some kinds of perks that we could offer to members. But as far as the content of the programming, I think it's kind of hard to figure that out. I guess one way you would be able to do it would be to have something simultaneously on the internet or that I don't see how with the airwaves you could limit what people listen to based on what they paid, and I don't really think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. MK Williams.
Well, I agree with Rose had said that I don't think, given our current state, that we should be charging to listen to us, because we're trying to reach to new listeners. But I think there is someone, Leonard Lopate, who's now back on the air, who has kind of developed his own, it sounds like a freemium kind of idea, which is that his programs are available on the archive for 2 weeks after they initially aired. And after that, I don't know if they're not available at all or if you have to pay to get them. But we could say something like that, like there's a time period when you can get it for free, and then after that you have to pay something. But I think if we did that, we should dedicate that money to go to our central services, which is to support the Pacifica Archives continuing as an institution. So that's my thought on that.
Okay. Jack Topama, you ready?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, this is a problem that's gone on for 50 years, hasn't it? I have 2 suggestions. I like what James said because I agree with it. I also like the idea that, like, if you borrow a book from a library and it's overdue, but I don't know how to make that work so that we could, monetize the podcast, as Kay just said. I believe we have to do 2 things that will bring us into the 21st century. Number one, we should double the membership fee, but maybe it has to be done so that WBAI has a Pacifica membership fee and a WBAI membership fee. I would pay extra to be a member of WBAI and extra to be a member of Pacifica. I believe that the $25 is a paltry sum in the modern world. You can't get takeout for less than $25 in the city I live in. And I think that's also true of Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. And I believe part of the reason why they keep the fee low is because we have a broken sense about democracy and broadcasting. We're the only thing in the world, I believe. I mean, I heard about a station in Connecticut where you have a subscription listenership. But the idea that we have few listeners should be a resounding message to all of us that not only are we giving away something that we value, but nobody values at $25 a membership to vote, right? To be part of the LSB, which in fact, that's another confusion that some people have, that we don't really run the station. We don't really run the network. We kind of advise the station, advise the network, and good stewardship is part of that. So I would say, I'll give $25 for WBAI. I'll give $25 to be a member of Pacifica as well. And I don't know if that gives me more rights, but I think that will give us an understanding that what people get easily, they don't value at all. And the second thing I would make a comment about is kind of like what James and Kay also said, that the failure of Pacifica, and this is Jim Dingman's comment from many, many years, the failure of Pacifica to monetize our special shows or our archival information is a good example of how, people don't even go to the library anymore. we have a society that wants everything for free, and
Can you
somebody
bring
else should
it to
pay
a
for it.
close,
No,
Jack?
you-
No, I'm done. I'm done. Everybody
Uh,
wants something for free and nobody wants to pay for it. So
uh,
I'm willing to pay for it. Thank you, Michael.
That's all right. You came in late, so I'm not sure you knew that you were subject to a 2-minute limit, but I think that was about 2.5 minutes. So
I apologize, Michael. I'll try to
no,
keep.
that's
it to
why I
minutes.
interrupted you. So,
No, it's
um,
not-
okay, Nissan Pitcher.
Yeah. So this is a tough position to be in. But first of all, the freemium model, yes, will not work in the radio station. We can supplement different types of models. There are other types of models, and maybe make our own version of a freemium model in Pacifica, and WBAI specifically. But what I think can be done is we can charge for added content and added more rewards inside to get people's personalization inside the radio. That I think adds a touch and brings in to something where we could build community. And I think the biggest thing that would attract people in our style is to build a community around radio. And that would give us something different and extra that would be more inclusive, giving people a voice and giving people a place to come into that's not corporate, that is not, controlled, that is not, alienating, but inclusive of all people, and gives voice to all people and empowers all people, and making themselves a way to personalize themselves. I will call this making radio the YouTube of radio. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, is the question that you had in mind still available and relevant?
I will change the question I haven't asked yet slightly.
All right. You want to go ahead with a question? Okay.
Sure.
And I just want to let everyone know that we have additional forums planned each Sunday after this. So there will be an opportunity to do more. I think we probably have a number of other juicy questions we can pose to you, but we'll be drawing this one to a close very soon. So go ahead, Eleanor.
Okay. What can you do what do you intend to do if you're elected to the local station board, and why can't you do it if you aren't?
All right. For that, Jim Dingman, please.
All right, well, let me answer the previous question first, which I didn't. We have to keep capacity building all the time. And one of the things we have to do is, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we have this consent decree of the FCC that has essentially eliminated 30 to 40% of our revenue. So one of the things we have to figure out is, and I think that everybody here on this phone call, I don't think any of us have actually gone through the FCC training. So that's something we need to do in order to creatively figure out how to deal with this new situation. Because the scenario that was presented that Michael was talking about, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, the FCC consent decree essentially makes it more difficult to operationalize that form of earning money. Now, the question that Eleanor said, what do I want to do now? Well, I don't know. I want to, I just want to see what we can do. Let's say if I'm not elected, I would want to basically make sure that we get young people into the station. And I'm in an interesting situation where I'm now around a lot of young people, and I'm slowly probing as to their attitude towards radio. I'm talking about people in their teens and early 20s. And, it'll be a learning experience for me, because my solution all the time is let Generation Z take the whole place over. Let them figure out how to handle this. And I know that's not popular to some, because that would mean a whole bunch of people would get overturned out of their programming slots. But I sometimes think that we just basically should pass the baton and do it now rather than later, because the demographics, as we all know, are baby boomers from the 60s, and that's has good and bad connotations. Thank you.
All right, Nissan Pitcher. You're muted, Nissan. Nissan, we're not hearing you. And Nissan, are you hearing us? You're muted.
Yes, hello, hello. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Eleanor, could you repeat your question?
Sure. What are you going to do? What do you hope to do if you're elected to the local station board? And why can't you do it anyway if you aren't?
Yeah, so I kind of answered this question already. I'll repeat. If elected to the station board, I will act as a technical advisor, and I would create, if not one doesn't already exist, a techno advisory board, as well as I'll commit myself to dealing with the financial board, learning from my elders of what the situation is at the station currently, and learning what's been done about it, and also providing new insights and stuff, and actually giving my insights and opinions and advising. As part of the, I can only do this as part of the LS board. I can't advise the station, because the role of the station board is to advise the people and the staff that run the station. So, so I guess that answers that question. I also would lend my talents as well to help form an app and all this other stuff, which again I wouldn't be able to do without the proper access to licensing and priority and IP and all this other stuff, NDAs, legal stuff, yada yada. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack DePalma. And it's 2-minute limit, Jack.
I apologize for coming late, Michael. First and second, thank you very much for having this, Jim and Michael. And thanks to the question. The idea that people do something more when they're on the LSB is not my idea. I've always helped WBAI for the last 20 years in every chance I had to volunteer to answer phones or to volunteer to help out the general manager or any of the producers. If they asked me to, I would always, use my personal car to help out. The second thing that I think we should all realize is that when you're on the LSB, it doesn't change the fact that you're for BAI or against BAI. When I hear people tell me that they want to tell producers or how to program this and that show, it's not what the LSB is all about. We are supportive of BAI. We're stewards of a good radio station in New York City, and we have to be reasonable about what that really means. To me, it means that I'm going to make a contribution, whether I'm a member of the LSB or not, and I'm going to advise them for what I think is good radio and good procedural business, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. MK Williams.
Well, like Jack, I have volunteered at the station. I volunteered when it was back at the church. I volunteered when it was on 8th Avenue. I even put in an appearance at 120 Wall Street, even though I was no longer living in New York by that time. So I would continue to support the station any which way I could, including volunteering. I haven't been a member of the board, and yet I have been the secretary for the last 2 years, and I would continue doing those services if they were desired. If not, I would continue volunteering in other ways. And I think that if the Loft Committee gets going again and is a good committee, I would be happy to participate in any outreach events or efforts that are supported by the board.
Okay, thank you. Martha Rowan.
I guess whatever I would, there's the main thing I guess I'll do if I get on the board is to is to get up to speed to really know more about how everything works at WBAI, which I know less about than I feel that I should. And that's certainly something I can do even before or without getting on the board. I also can work on committees as well. So either way, but as a member of the Indie slate, the Indie Caucus, I think it's useful to have as many people as possible who represent those values. So that would be one reason for having me on, because I absolutely would support the positions of the Indie Caucus.
Okay, thank you. John Brinkley.
That's interesting. I think that I support the ideas of the Pacifica and the WBAI. By being on the board, I can be more focused. I'm involved with a lot of different things, but being on the board, I'm committed, I'm focused, I'm dedicated. The board also has certain responsibilities in terms of evaluations and other things that is different than being off the board. So I think that by being on the board, I can be more focused on dedicating my time to things that matter in order to move the station forward. Although off the board, I would be supportive, but truthfully less dedicated because there are other organizations that I'm involved with. But on the board, I will be very focused on doing the things that board members do and doing things that I feel are important that need to be done to support the growth of BAI and Pacifica.
Okay, thank you. All right, James Sagerton.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. As a member of the LSB, I would be eligible to return to the Pacifica National Board. Of course, that would be up to my colleagues, and I would have to get their votes to do that. But I think I have spent the last several years on the national board, past many years, actually, and the past several years of that as the national board's treasurer. And with that comes a certain experience. You know, I know who the players are. I know the bylaws backwards and forwards. I know what the hidden agendas are that are underneath some of the surface actions that take place. I would want to use my efforts to protect WBAI from a national effort to undermine us, to change us in ways that we don't necessarily want to change, and possibly to eventually sell us if our current transition fundraising is not successful. And suddenly we can't make payroll. We may be forced with another situation like we were in 2019, where people from the national office come and disconnect us from our tower, our broadcast tower, turn us into a repeater station, and fundamentally alter our content. So I would like to go back to the national board to protect WBAI from those national frictions. And I think that's really the most important thing. That is the secondary thing that I would like to just chair the finance committee. I learned that the ways that we have to expand, other than, for example, going to YouTube and doing podcasts, that would not cost too much money, is to mine our own resources. I want to see us. We have decades worth of contact information for people. We have lists of major donors. We need to actively start to employ those more to our benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. It is 8:04. We're going to go to our last question of this evening.
May I ask for a bathroom break?
Can you I'll tell you what, I'll do the timing if you really need it. But we're going to just wrap up here with one more question. If you come back, you can start timing again. I'll do the timing. So, all right. So one last question of the evening. I think, my opinion, we have some juicy questions in store for future events like this. So future Sundays. Here is the last question. We're admitting Carol Wolfley to the. Is Carol Wolfley a candidate? Does anyone know? All right.
Hopefully, maybe a candidate from PFA, but
is Carol Wolfley a candidate in this LSB election?
Yes, for KPFA.
All right. All right, Carol, we're about to bring this event to a close, but we will include you in this last question. Everyone has 2 minutes.
She's not a candidate at WBAI.
Yes,
everybody.
This is open. We advertise this as being open to all candidates. Period. Okay. But thank you for letting me know. Okay. So, all right. The question is: it's been reported that a number of WBAI's show hosts, in fact, quite a substantial number, are on a Ukrainian government-sponsored hit list. It's quite a special distinction for WBAI. It says a lot about what we do. Reportedly, financial support and backing for the list is even coming from the United States and NATO. Some assert that such reports must be fake news, maybe Russian disinformation. Should these questions be important to the WBAI local station board, which has been asked to respond to this? And if so, what should the LSB be doing about it? So we will start with James Sagerton.
Okay, Michael, that was the subject of a motion that you brought before the LSB. So I realize your personal stake in this. At the time, I and the majority of the members of the board were not aware that this was an actual thing. You since provided me with some information indicating more so that it is. So whether it's an actual thing or not an actual thing, just the fact that it's out there is extremely dangerous to people. Anyone could act on such a hit list, whether they come from another government's agencies or from wherever they come. So yeah, this is a horrible situation. It's dangerous to our people, and of course we would want to get to the root of it and find out if our government or any other government has any part in this and whether or not it is a thing. So yeah, it's critical. We see the number of journalists that are being killed in Gaza, that are being killed in Ukraine. So yeah, it's very important.
Okay, thank you. Jim Dingman, you're next.
All right. Well, first of all, such a assertion, if true, of course, should be condemned. I'd want to see the verification of it in fact, rather than not, because I've certainly been around Pacifica for long enough to question automatically something like this when people assert it and when they assert it to defend themselves in their shows. We're already sitting there getting entangled with debates about this trial down in Florida, which has all sorts of problems. But the issue of defending people's free speech and their ability to not be subject to assassination, of course, but I'd want to see further proof about that. I don't accept these kind of comments just on face value. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John Brinkley.
I would just refer this to the authorities and let them check it out. I don't, and let them make recommendations as to whether we need to increase security or what. But I don't think we have the knowledge or the wherewithal to investigate and make decisions as to what should be done. I think we need to go to the folks who deal with these kind of things to have them investigate and to take their guidance.
Okay. Nissan Pitcher.
Okay, so this is kind of a odd situation, but if I was told that, hey, you have members on a hit list, I would take that as like a threat, but in which I would not respond to because I don't want to give the satisfaction of a threat. And also I'll probably make light of it and be like, wow, if I'm on a hit list, all my people on the list must be doing something right. So I would not take this as a negotiated with terrorists. I would not take this as or the possibility of being a troll. And the best thing is to not give credence or power to it, but to instead use as an opportunity to inject our own narrative. And I think we should make a positive spin out of this particular negative and horrific type of allegation that has been thrown at us. If whether it be credible or not, it is a moment of opportunity to respond. We should respond with something that is more positive and more strengthening, and take control of the narrative.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Carol Wolfley, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Oh, thank you. I just joined the meeting now. I apologize for being late. I was in another city. Could someone briefly summarize to me what you're talking about?
There's a list. It's a boycott, a blacklist, not a hit list.
I'll phrase it since I'm a question asking. It has been reported that there is a Ukrainian government sponsored hit list. You may not know about it, but basically it puts people up on the web, suggests that they are enemies of the Ukrainian state and are better off dead. And when they wind up dead or killed, they're crossed off the list. A number of our show hosts are reportedly on it. If you get into these reports, and the board has been asked to do something about it because it's also reportedly NATO financed and CIA financed. And the question is whether the WBAI board should do something about its show hosts being on such a hit list and what they should do.
Oh, thank you. Well, so I'm in California, and I think that violence and hit lists, obviously, I mean, I think all of us would agree that we do not want people to be targeted. And I think part of why I'm here today is because I think we need to change the culture. And part of that means not only changing the larger culture, but changing the culture of Pacifica and of each of our stations so that we can have respectful and functional meetings and decision making. So that's the first I had heard of that. So of course, I think it's a serious issue and it ought to be investigated. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. MK Williams.
Well,
I think this is in sort of the category of asking the board to take positions on sort of international political events. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. For example, Paul DiRienzo has been asking for months for a resolution against the just excessive killing of civilians in Gaza. I think that calling out a sort of general resolution, calling out lack of journalistic neutrality, calling out lack of medical neutrality in these situations would be advisable. I also felt I wasn't a voting member, but I was present for the argument that was made at the board regarding this incident. I felt that the evidence, at least at that time, was not there for that this was, there's already disagreement whether it's a hit list or whether it's a boycott list or whatever, what kind of list it is. But I think we also just don't know how much some of us may have already been targeted in terms of, our information being published on the dark web or whatever. And maybe that should be part of the survey, if we're going to survey the staff on whether they feel they experienced any negative responses from being associated with a more left political entity. I think we all know that
And if you could bring it to a close.
I will. I just wanted to mention if Project 2025, all of us, everybody associated with Pacifica is already listed as a potential, victim in that document.
Thank you. Jack DePalma.
Michael, I'm sorry that we keep bringing these things up. We're adding to the chilling effect of people that threaten you and have no way to deliver to you your ultimate responsibility to die because they don't like what you say. I believe that I saw Norman Finkelstein talk about John Stuart Mill's book, and I started to realize that the reason why WBAI is so important to me, and also all of us here, is because they're going to start censoring books like Kay just said. I'm like Jim. I don't believe that I'm supposed to be afraid of what people assert is happening on the other side of the world. And until somebody comes up to me with a baseball bat, I'm really not going to be prepared to defend this person or that person. And when you say many staff members, I think the word many is part of that problem. We have a vague idea, and we saw what the United States did to Julian Assange. So just like Kay just said, if we don't understand that freedom of speech sometimes requires risk, and if we don't talk about the truth, we just talk about things that we're not afraid of saying, which many times I've heard people on this board say or do, we're lost. And I don't even want to support a radio station if we don't say the truth. So what Ukraine is doing, or what Russia is doing, or what's happening in Gaza, to me, is the truth. And everything else about being afraid about saying what I think about what's going on in Ukraine, or what I think about what's going on in Gaza, is a chilling effect. And so I don't want to lose my freedom of thought. That's the first thing. And that's why I'm a little concerned, because if we keep bringing up the chilling effect, oh, I'm afraid of what they said to me because I said what I said to them, you might as well just shut your radio station off, Michael. Take the books out of the library and put them in a big pile and throw a match on them. Because the reason why I'm here today, and the reason why I think many people are here today, that's Kay and Jim, and I hope, Michael, you too, is because when they lock up the libraries, the first thing they're going to do is tell you can't read those books, like Kay said about 2025. And I believe, not because, one last thing to say, the clock is a cruel master, but the bank account is a more cruel master. If what Jim Dingman said is true, we don't worry about Ukraine, we worry about California.
Thanks, Jack. I have to observe time limits. So, Martha Rowan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, I'm listening to both sides on this. I think something like this needs to be taken seriously, and I don't see that some kind of a statement by the board decrying such a thing is the same thing as running away with our tail between our legs. I think that I mean we see journalists being killed. And when it comes to Ukraine, we had the example of Gonzalo Lira, who was disappeared or got done away with without, even though he was an American citizen, without any support from the American government. So I think it's something that should be taken seriously. Obviously, how likely it is to be actually enacted here in the United States is probably at the moment fairly slim, but I think it's certainly something that is worth the board making some kind of a statement decrying it. I don't see how that indicates that we don't it's not like saying we shouldn't we should shut down people's freedom of speech. I think it would be a way of pointing out exactly how important and a media source such as WBAI is, that this is a place that is courageous enough to speak out in spite of whatever risks there are.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to thank everyone for coming this evening. And I'll remind everyone that this has been, we've been recording as we've been doing this. So there'll be a recording that's available as candidates. You know, if you feel you did well, share the recording and help the voters learn about who you all are as candidates, and it'll be posted. I have to end this to say that the views expressed here are those of the candidates, not of the radio station or Pacifica Foundation. And the fact that we've had this event and sponsored as a town hall is not an endorsement by any of us, any candidate. So once again, thank you very much, and we're going to be doing this again on additional Sundays. So please come back and join us, and we'll have great questions for everyone, I hope. And I hope everyone enjoyed and actually feel they know the candidates better as a result of today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.